Take the shot. Green light. I repeat, you have a green light. Put him down before he pulls that trigger." The voice of Captain Miller screamed through the earpiece, distorted by static and the sheer panic of the moment. On the roof of the parking garage overlooking the First National Bank, Officer Jenkins was hyperventilating. He was 24 years old, the department's newest designated marksman, and this was his first active hostage crisis. Through the scope of his Remington 700, the world was a terrifying blur of variables. The suspect, a desperate gunman in a balaclava, was holding a young teller in a chokehold, pressing a pistol to her temple. He was using her as a human shield, his body almost entirely obscured by hers. All Jenkins could see was a sliver of the gunman's forehead, maybe 2 inches wide, bobbing erratically as the man screamed at the negotiators. Sweat stung Jenkins' eyes. His hands were slick on the polymer stock. The crosshairs were dancing in figure eights. He couldn't do it. If he missed by an inch, he would kill the hostage. The weight of that possibility was crushing his lungs. I can't get a lock," Jenkins stammered into his headset. "He's moving too much. I don't have the angle. I can't take the shot." Standing a few feet behind the police barricade on the roof, 80-year-old Bob watched the chaos with a stillness that was unnerving. He was wearing a beige windbreaker, a flat cap, and clutching a bag of groceries he had picked up before the streets were locked down. He had been escorted up here by a confused rookie cop who thought he was a resident of the adjacent apartment building, only to get stuck when the perimeter tightened. Bob chewed on a toothpick, his gray eyes narrowing as he looked at the scene below, not through a scope, but with the naked eye. He saw what Jenkins didn't. He saw the rhythm of the gunman's panic. He saw the geometry of the ricochet risk, but mostly he saw the fear radiating off the young sniper like heat waves. "He's not going to shoot, Captain," Bob said, his voice grave and low. "Boy's heart rate is about 140. He's shaking. He's thinking about the lawsuit, not the target. Before we witness this unassuming grandfather step into the breach and do what an entire SWAT team couldn't, take a moment to honor the men who learned their trade when failure wasn't an option. Type courage in the comments if you believe that hesitation is the enemy of survival." Captain Miller spun around, his face purple with rage. "Who the hell are you? Get this civilian off the roof, now!" 2 officers moved to grab Bob, but the radio crackled again, stopping them in their tracks. "Commander, the suspect is counting down. He says he's executing the hostage in 10 seconds. 10, 9. The situation had gone terminal. The negotiator's voice was pleading, but the gunman was past the point of return. He was going to kill the girl. Jenkins was frozen, his finger hovering over the trigger, paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. He was sobbing quietly. I can't do it. 8, 7. Bob didn't fight the officers. He dropped his grocery bag. Eggs cracked on the concrete. He stepped forward with a speed that belied his 80 years, a sudden burst of kinetic energy that knocked the wind out of the captain. "Move," Bob growled. It wasn't a request. It was a command spoken with a tone of authority that made the captain flinch instinctively. Bob walked up to the prone sniper. "Get up, son. You're done." "What?" Jenkins blinked, looking up with tear-filled eyes. 6, 5. "Give me the rifle," Bob said. He didn't wait for an answer. He reached down and physically lifted the young officer off the shooting mat, shoving him aside with surprising strength. Jenkins, broken by the pressure, didn't resist. He collapsed against the ventilation unit. Captain Miller drew his service weapon. "Step away from the weapon. That is a police-issue firearm." 4, 3. Bob ignored the gun pointed at his back. He dropped into the prone position behind the rifle. His movements were mechanical, fluid, and ancient. He didn't frantically search for the target. He didn't fumble with the knobs. He settled the stock into his shoulder, his cheek finding the weld instantly. The scope picture was messy, The magnification was too high. Bob reached up and dialed the zoom back, widening the field of view. He saw the gunman. He saw the hostage. He saw the sweat on the gunman's forehead. 2. "I have the shot," Bob whispered. It was a statement of fact, devoid of ego. "Don't do it," Miller screamed. "You're not authorized. If you miss 1." The gunman tightened his grip. His finger started to depress the trigger of his pistol. Boom! The Remington roared. It was a single, deafening thunderclap that silenced the city block. The recoil drove into Bob's shoulder, but the barrel didn't jump. He followed through, racking the bolt, clack, clack, and chambering a fresh round before the brass from the first shot even hit the ground. He held the sight picture. Down below, the gunman's head snapped back violently. A pink mist vaporized in the air behind him. His body went instantly limp, crumpling backward away from the hostage. The gun fell from his hand, skittering harmlessly across the marble floor. The hostage stood there for a second, covered in speckles of blood, before screaming and running toward the police line. "Target down," Bob said, his voice flat. Central nervous system hit. He was dead before he heard the sound. The silence on the roof was suffocating. Captain Miller stood with his mouth open, his gun hanging limp in his hand. Officer Jenkins was staring at Bob with a mix of horror and awe. The radio exploded with noise. "Suspect down. Hostage secure. Repeat, suspect is neutralized. Who took the shot? Jenkins, was that you? Perfect hit, right through the tear duct." Bob slowly stood up. He dusted off the knees of his slacks. He picked up the spent casing from the concrete and set it on the shooting mat. He turned to the stunned captain. "Your scope is 02 clicks high," Bob muttered, "and tell that boy to stop holding his breath. It starves the eyes of oxygen. You breathe through the shot." Captain Miller holstered his weapon, his hands shaking. He looked at the old man, really looked at him. He saw the way Bob stood, feet planted, shoulders relaxed, the 1,000-yard stare that pierced right through him. Miller's eyes dropped to the grocery bag, then back to Bob's face. A memory triggered in the back of his mind, a photo from a history briefing at the academy. "Wait a minute," Miller whispered. "The angle, the adjustment. You didn't even use the laser rangefinder. You just knew." Miller stepped closer. "Who are you?" Bob picked up his grocery bag, inspecting the damage. "Just a guy trying to get his eggs home, Captain." "No, you're not," Miller said, his voice gaining strength. "I know that stance. I've seen training films. You're Robert the Surgeon Hayes, USMC Scout Sniper, Khe-Sanh, 1968. You held off a battalion for 3 days. They said you could shoot the wings off a fly at 1,000 yards. The young officers gasped. The legend of the surgeon was mythical in the sniper community. He was the man who wrote the book on urban hides. He was the man who had retired into obscurity 40 years ago, disappearing into the suburbs. Bob adjusted his flat cap. "That was a long time ago, Captain. Different war. Same fear." He looked at Officer Jenkins, who was still sitting on the ground, looking ashamed. Bob walked over to him. The young man flinched, expecting a reprimand. Instead, Bob reached out a hand and pulled him to his feet. "Don't quit, son," Bob said gently. "You hesitated because you care about that girl's life. That makes you a good man. The day you stop caring is the day you stop shooting. Just remember, fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. Next time, decide faster." Bob patted the young officer on the shoulder, turned, and walked toward the stairwell door. "Now, if you gentlemen are done playing cowboys, I need to go buy more eggs. My wife is making meatloaf." "Sir," Captain Miller called out, snapping a sharp salute. "Thank you." The other officers, realizing what had just happened, snapped to attention. They watched the old man in the windbreaker disappear into the building. He didn't look back. He didn't ask for a medal. He didn't wait for the press. He had done the job because the job needed doing, and that was enough. Below them, the paramedics were treating the hostage, who was physically unharmed thanks to a bullet that had passed within an inch of her ear. She would go home to her family tonight, and she would never know that her life had been saved not by the SWAT team, but by an 80-year-old Marine who just happened to be walking by. It is easy to think that the world belongs to the young and the strong. We push our elders to the side, thinking their time is past. But Bob Hayes proved that while the body may age, the warrior spirit is timeless. The instinct to protect, the skill to act, and the courage to take the shot when no one else can. That doesn't retire. We live in a time where everyone wants to be the hero, but few are willing to make the hard decisions. Bob showed us that a true hero acts in silence and walks away before the applause starts. If this story inspired you to respect the hidden strengths of our veterans, hit that subscribe button. Join our community as we uncover more stories of the legends walking among us. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that the most dangerous weapon in the world is a prepared mind. And never, ever underestimate the old man with the quiet eyes. He might just save your life.